right, John Corcoran here at RetailX in Chicago, and I am here with Jean-Paul Morresi from Watt International, and you've got a background in architecture and also merchandising. Tell us a little bit about Watt International and what you guys do.
Sure. Watt International is an integrated retail agency, so we do pretty much anything that anybody needs if they're trying to sell something to somebody.
Okay.
Sounds a little ambitious, but everything from brand strategy to business strategy to product design to packaging to marketing to retail design, digital content, the whole gamut. We recognized long before it was a fashionable thing, to be specific, about 53 years ago, that an integrated proposition would have more impact with the customer. And so our founder, Don Watt, started a company that really took the best of brand agencies and design agencies and brought them together, which at the time was a bit of a novel thing. And ever since then, we've been kind of bolting on other services that help people sell.
So give me an example of the types of clients you work with and how exactly you help those different pieces to be integrated.
Where to start? We've got a few sort of big ones from our history. For those familiar with Canadian retail, a company named Loblaws, we helped sort of turn around way back in the late 60s and develop the President's Choice brand for them, which has become a little bit of the standard for private label branding across North America. We came up with the Home Depot concept, name, logo, the whole first concept. We were instrumental in implementing that. So a couple of game changers, but at present we're working with retailers across Canada, the US, and Latin America, doing everything from helping them reinvent themselves to helping them bring their brand to life on a daily basis.
So let's talk a little bit about the changing landscape of retail right now. It's been in the news a lot lately. One of the recurring themes of the conversations we've been having over the course of the last day has been that the headlines are a little inflated, or a lot inflated, not really true as to what's happening on the ground. What are you seeing in terms of what's actually happening on the ground with retail in North America and Latin America, as you say?
For a while you couldn't throw a stone without hitting some sort of dire prediction around the end of retail. And it couldn't be further from the truth. It looked like it because there were a lot of retailers who didn't really embrace change. And those names disappeared. And there may be a few more that are still to come. But by and large, the folks who looked at the horizon and were open to and willing to change and listen to their customer and keep pace with them are thriving like they never have before. And the amount of innovation that is kind of bubbling up from the ground up and being incorporated into what mainstream and larger retailers are doing is making this what I think is, at least during my professional career, the most exciting time there's been in retail.
That's interesting. So one of the changes that we keep hearing about is that a lot of retailers are downsizing, they're changing the footprint of their space. Is that something that you're seeing? And a lot of people have been saying that it makes it for an interesting challenge because you have to redesign the space.
We haven't seen a ton of downsizing of late. We actually saw a little bit of that about a decade ago, where we were actively engaged with a lot of retailers in actually reducing their footprint and finding alternate and complementary uses for that space. There's been a bit of a right sizing that's happened in the last little while. The way I would characterize the focus that I'm seeing right now anyway is that retailers are looking differently at the value of their retail space. And when they look at sort of the future, they may not be investing in quite the same amount of square footage and are trying to use their supply chains to kind of better respond to delivery of their proposition in a smarter way that reaches more people without building more and more facilities that really aren't necessary. But it's not so much a contraction as it is a smarter expansion.
So what does that mean, not building as many facilities that are necessary? Does that mean like trying to have a faster supply chain from manufacturer to store shelves?
That supply chain issue has already been dealt with, right? And the people who didn't deal with that issue are those casualties we spoke about earlier. Now that supply chain is in place, it's made for a much more agile retailer. And so what they're able to do is, without building an entire department store, build something experientially rich that is closer to where people are, that provides all of the benefits and amenities of it in a way that is aligned with, tools and behaviors and practices that people are increasingly more comfortable with. Right? My kids are digital native. They don't know a world where an iPad wasn't in their hands. And when you look at the impacts that technology on our life have had, there isn't anything strange about it being part of the path to purchase for anybody anymore.
Right. So a couple of those changes that people have been talking about is, one, that everyone has a supercomputer essentially in their hand, in their pocket as they come into the store. And another one that's interesting is removing, registers from stores. What are the impacts you're seeing in both of those?
The removal of registers is still for a whole lot of retailers an aspirational place. It's not quite where they are. And somebody today in one of the conferences I was at spoke to the moment of transaction and actually paying for something as a pain point. I can see that, and I can appreciate how that might be understood as such.
Or friction, some people call it, yeah.
Friction, pain, parting with your money is never a fun thing, I guess.
True.
Although I'm not quite sure what happens with the regret when you get the bill later.
Yeah.
I do think that the cashless and sort of alternate transactional environment is an opportunity to engage in a different way. I don't know that it's the most critical thing that's out there. I think that the quality of product and experience that you're delivering is critical. And if you're in an industry or a segment of retail where somehow eliminating that friction point can lead to a better long-term relationship with your customer and between your customer and your brand, that's great. It's probably not the highest thing on my list of priorities universally across all retail.
Yeah. What are you mentioned experientially, I can't even pronounce it, but you said it, okay. Experiences that are rich within the retail environment. And one individual we interviewed earlier today was talking about in a retail environment, a shopping environment like a department store, but putting in bars and putting in restaurants. Your thoughts on that?
We've talked a lot about experience for a long time, and we all know that the younger cohorts of consumers who are coming through are far more willing to spend on experience than they are on goods, on material goods. It's less important to them. Food's a pretty easy place to kind of to get points for experience. But I think that it really depends by category and industry and what you're in, what experience means, right? We're big believers at our agency in really understanding the segments who you're talking to, understanding what their priorities are, and delivering across the entire path to purchase moments of not only reduced friction, but delight that align with what their emotional, physical, and other needs are. So I can't make a blanket statement about what experience looks like other than it being an active and engaging response to what you really need. And it's far less transactional than historical retail has been. I made a comment in an earlier sort of roundtable today around the fact that we're seeing more and more in smaller retailers, because it's always been a bit of the case in larger retailers and larger clients, that there are brand marketers who understand sort of the soft emotional dimensions to sort of relationships that you have and that your brand has with customers. But we're seeing more and more of that thinking sort of trickle down into every retailer now. And so the absolute transactional approach to just converting a sale and getting the goods out, and the old school stack it high and it will fly mentality is disappearing. Because even in that case, somebody is thinking about what is the nature and quality of that experience that's going to actually bring a bit of delight, that's going to bring a little bit of a remarkability to people's experience, so that they can go out and be your advocate.
We're running a little short on time, but any final thoughts, any other changes that are happening that you're seeing in the retail marketplace that we haven't talked about that you want to mention?
none that I could probably fit into the low time that we're running on. And, no, I think it's a very exciting time to be engaged in retail. It's terrifying for some, but I'm looking forward to working with my team to kind of hitting these challenges head on and coming up with new and novel approaches that build brands and build better connections with them and their audiences.
Well said. So Jean-Paul from Watt International, where can people learn more about Watt International?
Our website, our URL is www.wattisretail.com. Anybody who has any questions can get there, and there are any number of links on there where you can get in touch with us. And if you find me on there, you feel free to hit the link and give me a call.
All right, great. We're broadcasting live from RetailX in Chicago, and we'll be back soon with another interview.